If you can outrun me, old man, my $60 billion company is yours. Yeah, that's how it started. That one stupid sentence, shouted across a courtyard, under string lights, in front of a few hundred people with champagne glasses and camera phones. I can still hear it echo off the marble. You ever watch your own arrogance leave your mouth and think, that's not me, and then realize it absolutely is? Welcome back. Here is another story that will interest you, but before we dive in, support the channel by clicking the like button, subscribe, and share. Now let's get into the story. That was me that night, Antonio Lewis, founder and CEO of Lewis Dynamics, a man who thought humility was something you put in a mission statement, not a mirror. The air was thick, Virginia heat that clung to your skin and made tempers heavier. Across from me, Joe Frank stood quiet. My groundskeeper, 60 years old, dust on his work boots, sweat on his collar, eyes calm like a man who'd already seen everything worth seeing. I remember thinking his silence was defiance. Now I know it was discipline. The guests froze. My executives, my investors, men who pretended to admire me, were half smiling, half waiting for a train wreck. Someone whispered, "He's not serious." Someone else hit record. And Joe, he didn't flinch, just looked at me, steady and unbothered. "You serious?" he asked. "Dead serious," I spat. "Let's see what that pride of yours can do without a broom in your hand." It sounded clever in the moment, like control, but it wasn't. It was the sound of a man trying to hide fear behind laughter. You could feel the air tighten when he nodded once, like a teacher humoring a student. "All right," he said, "if that's what you need, if that's what I needed." Now, sitting here months later, bourbon in hand, telling this story to friends who still can't believe it happened, I can only say this. That was the moment everything I'd built started to burn, and I didn't even smell the smoke. 2 hours earlier, I thought I still owned the world. The lake shimmered, the bourbon was flowing, and pride was pouring faster than the whiskey. But when Joe Frank walked by, steady as always, I opened my mouth and lost more than I ever imagined. My estate stretched across 400 acres of Virginia hills, a monument to my ambition. Every inch of it screamed power, glass walls, imported marble, private helipads, a lake that reflected the company's logo whenever the sun hit just right. People didn't visit my home. They entered my orbit. Lewis Dynamics was worth $60 billion and climbing. We didn't sell technology. We sold dominance. I built an empire out of pressure, a culture where everyone had to run faster, speak louder, shine harder, or disappear. That kind of hunger attracts the best, but it also blinds you to the truth that no one's running toward anything. They're just running from you. That day, the so-called leadership retreat was in full swing. Laughter everywhere, cigars glowing, investors pretending to be humble. It was my favorite kind of performance. Everyone acting like I was some modern Caesar hosting a feast. I thrived on that illusion. Godlike, untouchable. Or so I thought. Then Joe Frank walked by. Same gray hoodie. Same steady pace. The man had been working my grounds for years. Invisible, but always there. Quiet. Early, dependable. He moved like time didn't matter. Like he wasn't rushing to prove anything. And I hated that about him. I used to think silence was weakness. I mistook calm for submission. But that day, watching him walk past my table while I laughed too loud and drank too much, I felt something twist. Not anger exactly, more like envy disguised as superiority. Leans forward, voice lower. You know, if you've ever mistaken stillness for weakness, maybe this is your moment to pause, to listen, to remember that quiet people often carry storms you'll never see coming. And if that truth hits you somewhere deep, then maybe you're meant to hear the rest of this story. Because that's when pride decided to test its limits. And I, in my perfect suit and empty heart, let it. It happened fast. Too fast for reason to keep up. Joe was jogging the perimeter trail, same as he did every morning. The man was 60, but he moved with this quiet rhythm, like the earth trusted him to keep time. My guests were laughing, half drunk, basking in my stories of conquest. Then he appeared, just a worker passing by, and I opened my mouth. "Didn't know we had track practice for janitors," I said. It was meant to get a laugh. It did at first. The kind of forced laughter that comes from people scared to stop smiling. Joe slowed, turned his head, and met my eyes. No glare, no anger, just stillness. Didn't know billionaires feared competition, he said. You could feel it, the air tightening like a drum. My guest stopped mid-sip. Even a lake went quiet. It wasn't the words that stung. It was how he said them. Calm, almost kind, like he wasn't trying to win, just to remind me I wasn't untouchable. Something in me snapped. Pride, anger, humiliation, all of it bubbling into one reckless impulse. All right then, I said, standing. Let's make this interesting. You win, Joe, you get my company. Lewis Dynamics, all of it. Gasps. My CFO muttered, Tony, that's not. I raised my hand, silencing him. The crowd leaned in. Attention was oxygen, and I was inhaling poison like it was air. Joe just nodded once. If that's what you want. And that was it. No argument. No smirk. Just agreement from a man who already knew how the story would end. Looking back now, I realized I wasn't challenging him. I was fighting my reflection and losing. And if you've ever let pride make a decision your heart couldn't carry, pause for a second. This story might remind you why humility saves more than money ever will. By sunrise, my empire was on fire. News vans lined the gate of my Virginia estate like vultures. Drones hovered over the lake. My phone buzzed nonstop. Texts, mentions, hashtags. Hashtag the billionaire bet. Overnight, a private moment of arrogance had turned into national entertainment. I scrolled through the headlines. CEO bets $60 billion company on foot race with employee. The richest man in tech loses his mind, or his fortune. At first, I laughed. I told myself it was good press, proof that I was still the bold one, the risk taker. The world was watching me again. But by noon, the tone shifted. PR called, voices tight with panic. Antonio, this looks bad. You're humiliating a 60-year-old employee on camera. The board demanded a retraction. I told them to shove it. Backing down isn't in my vocabulary, I said. And I meant it. I thought silence meant surrender. But Joe, he stayed silent. And somehow, he was winning already. No interviews. No posts. No reactions. Just clocked in like every other morning. Mowing lawns while the internet turned him into a folk hero. The calmness infuriated me. I was shouting to prove I was right. He was quiet to prove he didn't care. So I prepared. Like it was war. I hired a personal trainer. Ran laps around the estate until my lungs burned. Ordered state-of-the-art running gear, electrolyte packs, even an oxygen mask. My staff watched in disbelief as I turned a foolish dare into an Olympic campaign. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't racing Joe Frank. I was racing every person who ever doubted me, and every shadow of pride that lived inside my own chest. The morning of the race felt like Judgment Day. The sun broke over the hills behind my estate, laying gold across the private runway where I'd built my empire's airstrip. But that morning, it wasn't a runway. It was an arena. Reporters crowded behind metal barriers, drones buzzed overhead, and employees whispered like they were attending a public execution. Mine. I arrived dressed for victory. Custom track gear, company logo across my chest, running shoes engineered by my own R&D team. Cameras flashed as I stretched, every move a performance of control. Then Joe arrived. Old gray hoodie, faded sneakers. No entourage, no words, just calm. He nodded once to me, like a man clocking into another workday. I hated how unshakable he looked. For me, it was a show. For him, it was just life continuing as usual. A supervisor raised her hand. Ready, set. The word go cracked through the air like thunder. I exploded off the line, my heart roaring with adrenaline. It felt good, divine even. Every stride screamed, "You built this world. You own it." The crowd cheered. I could hear laughter behind me. Joe's slow pace had already become the punchline I needed. Halfway down the strip, I looked back. He was smaller in the distance, steady, almost serene. I smirked. Then something shifted. The air thickened. My lungs burned. My legs turned to lead. I tried to breathe, but it came out shallow, ragged. Every dollar I'd ever made couldn't buy oxygen. My stride broke. My body folded. I hit the pavement hard. The roar of the crowd collapsed into silence. And in that silence, I felt the first crack in everything I'd ever believed about power. If you've ever chased something so hard you forgot to breathe, stick around. What came next taught me what real power feels like. I remember the sound first, the slap of my palms hitting asphalt, then the taste of dust, then the silence. My lungs clawed for air that wouldn't come. The world spun in fragments, cameras tilting, gasps echoing, someone shouting my name like it might save me. But all I could hear was the blood roaring in my ears and the cruel rhythm of my own heartbeat betraying me. Somewhere in the haze, I saw movement. Joe Frank. He wasn't sprinting. He wasn't even breathing hard. His steps were measured, quiet, almost gentle. That same rhythm I'd mocked, the one I thought belonged to a man who'd never known ambition, was now the only sound in the world that made sense. He passed me without a word at first. The cameras followed him like disciples. Every lens caught the moment. The billionaire on the ground, the janitor still running. My empire, $60 billion in pride, shrinking behind his slow, steady pace. Then he slowed. Just a little. Look down. Need a hand, boss. 6 words. That's all it took to gut me. No smirk. No gloat. No hint of revenge. Just an offer. The kind that comes from a man who doesn't need to prove anything. I couldn't speak. My throat locked. My pride, that faithful armor, finally cracked open and let the truth through. I wasn't the powerful one. He nodded once, kept moving, the steady rhythm of his shoes fading into the wind. And somewhere between the echo of those footsteps and the whir of camera drones above me, I realized the race wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because when the world stops watching you win, that's when it finally starts watching who you really are. The next thing I remember was the ceiling. White, sterile, unforgiving. Hospital air smells like humility. It sticks to you. My leg was wrapped, for in my arm, and my phone vibrating every few seconds like it couldn't wait to remind me how bad things were. Headlines blurred across the screen. The billionaire who couldn't finish. Money can't buy endurance. Antonio Lewis collapses mid-race. Employee wins by grace. They made it sound poetic. It wasn't. It was a slow-motion implosion. Investors called nonstop. The board scheduled an emergency review of conduct unbecoming. Translation: they were deciding how to survive without me. My PR team begged for a statement. Something humble but strategic. But there's no strategy for falling face first in front of the world. Meanwhile, the internet was on fire. Memes of me gasping on the ground went viral within hours. Someone even edited my fall to dramatic music. 10 million views in a day. Every frame of humiliation replayed in high definition. Then, in the middle of it all, my door creaked open. Joe Frank stepped in, still in his work clothes, hat in hand. No cameras. No press. Just him. I came to check you're all right, he said. I stared at him, voice rough. You came to take your company? He gave a soft chuckle. Wasn't racing for that. I was racing because you asked. That line, it hit deeper than the fall. No anger. No pride. Just truth. A truth so plain it tore through every excuse I'd built around myself. He nodded once, turned to leave. The room felt emptier when he was gone, like his silence took something from me, something I didn't know I'd miss. And lying there, surrounded by machines that measured my every breath, I realized the real investigation wasn't coming from the boardroom. It was coming from inside me. When I walked into the boardroom, the silence was colder than the marble floor. The same men and women who once toasted my brilliance now avoided my eyes. Not out of anger, out of calculation. Antonio, my chairman, began carefully. Your incident has placed the company at risk. We have to consider public trust. Public trust. 2 words that can erase decades of empire building. I sat there, listening as they outlined the terms. Suspension pending review, a mandatory apology, a rebranding initiative to restore credibility. My own company, now politely pushing me out of the picture I'd painted. I signed the papers. My signature looked small against the page. Outside that room, I wasn't the titan anymore. I was the headline, the meme, the warning. But here's the twist. While I was drowning in damage control, Joe Frank was rising quietly. Employees started greeting him with respect. Some even asked him for advice. The same board that sidelined me invited him in to consult on workplace integrity and humility training. Imagine that. The man I'd mocked for mowing lawns was now teaching the people who once feared my temper how to lead with grace. And he didn't gloat. Not once. He still clocked in at 6, still wore those worn-out work boots. The cameras wanted him. He didn't care. That's when I realized something no book, no seminar, no billion-dollar deal had ever taught me. Leadership isn't about being followed. It's about being worth following. The man I mocked taught me how to stand again. Not by lifting me up, but by refusing to push me down. And as his quiet shadow stretched further than my legacy ever had, one question started keeping me awake at night. What do you do when a man you underestimated becomes the mirror you can't ignore? I drove past the old runway last week. It was quiet. No cameras, no crowd, no laughter, just the wind cutting through the fields and that faint white line still burned into the asphalt. The line where I fell. Funny thing about that line, it used to mark humiliation. Now it marks the moment I started to understand what mattered. Months have passed since the race, but the lesson hasn't aged. My company moved on. The headlines faded. But the man I was that day, he didn't survive. And that's a good thing. I speak at universities now, business schools, leadership seminars. They expect numbers, innovation, strategies. Instead, I tell them this story. Not as the billionaire who lost a race, but as the man who finally learned why he needed to. I tell them about Joe Frank, how he never asked for anything, never sought credit, never wanted fame. Before he retired, he shook my hand one last time and said, "Real power isn't how fast you run, it's how steady you stay." That line has lived rent-free in my head ever since. It's why I walk slower now, why I listen longer, why I build smaller but stronger. If this story stayed with you, maybe it's because you've been running too, chasing approval, control, that invisible finish line that keeps moving every time you think you've arrived. Don't wait to fall like I did. Don't wait for the cameras or the silence or the shame. Learn stillness before pride teaches it the hard way. And if you found a piece of yourself in my fall, stick around. I've got more to share about what arrogance costs and what grace somehow still repairs. Thank you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. See you in the next one.